So my name is Karen Malone. I'm retired now, but I had my own coaching business here in Skerries, Calavita Coaching. And I trained in neurolinguistic programming, and I'm a master practitioner as well. And I've used that, and it's helped me a lot. I was diagnosed with ME very early days, back in the day in 1990, after 5 years of going through symptoms and not knowing what was going on. I'm sure it's a story that's fairly familiar to you all. But I left work in 1993 due to illness. I had intended to take maybe a leave of absence or something, but that wasn't available according to HR. So I left, I worked in the Mater, and after a year of unpaid sick leave, and my contract was terminated. So that kind of left it quite difficult because I'd been a public servant. There was, no social welfare, nothing kind of allowed me. And eventually I found there was a private pension I could go for, but it took 4 years. Again, it's the burden of proof always with that. But in the meantime, I've had quite a good life. I have two boys, and they're 27 and 29, and joys of my life. And I also have a very understanding husband who I met when he was 17 and I was 18. And he's kind of stood by me for the whole journey, which, I hope all of you have someone like that who support you, because I know how hard it is when people don't understand. People just don't get it because, you look fine, you're okay. But I kind of became a homemaker and rested as much as I could and did what I could around the house and with the kids. But when my youngest was in fifth year, I kind of said, well, do you know what? I want more. I really do want more. I want something for me, and the me is a big part of Emmy, who you are, your identity. And I kind of wanted more. And I said, look, do you know what? I'm going to give it an L go. And a friend of mine had suggested life coaching to me, and I was like, life, what in the name of God's that? Had never heard of it. But I signed up for a great one on Groupon. I think it was 70 quid at the time, which turned out to be neurolinguistic programming. But that was a thing that started my journey. Now, neurolinguistic programming basically is you're using your neurology and using language to reprogram your neurology for your brain, and that I'll explain a little bit more about it in a minute. But it kind of got me to look at my behaviors, at my belief. It nearly was a study into myself. And sometimes we kind of lose sense of ourselves when we have ME because we're put under this big umbrella of symptoms, and we're not fit to do a whole lot, and we have brain fog and we have fatigue and we have so many different symptoms that half the time I thought I was going mad, and at one stage I really thought I had dementia when going through menopause, when brain fog really got the better of me. But having something to focus on really made a big difference to me. I really bought into the whole neurolinguistic programming, and I studied and did a diploma. But after I'd finished the diploma, now that would have normally have taken me probably a year, but it took me about 3 years because again I had to do everything at my own pace. And I suppose that is to say that you can always do something. You don't have to compare yourself to anybody else. You don't have to do it at anybody else's pace. But it was something that actually just, again, brought me energy, brought me something to myself. It was something different, something really interesting to get absorbed in. But then I found out if I wanted to practice, and that I would have to do an on-site course, which was a little bit of a challenge because it was 6 days, and I at that stage didn't think I would make the 6 days. So I kind of said, well, look, what, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a whirl. If I make half a day, that's good. If I make a full day, what the heck? Now, I was lucky because I was able to stay where the course has been held. And I made the 6 days, which was absolutely amazing. But it brought me a huge discovery in my journey with ME, because physically I was absolutely in bits. I could barely stand. I had to sit and have a shower. My hands were shaking so much I was barely able to write. But I was just brought in by these people and talking in these concepts, and it just captured me. And I remember going back to the room and thinking, wow, you know, I've more than one energy. I don't just have physical energy. I actually have mental energy too. And maybe it's a little bit slow. Sure, what harm is it? I still have it. And what if I could harness those energies one at a time? So if my physical energy was low, what if I used my mental energy instead? And vice versa. And it kind of opened up my map in a huge way. Because before, once I had no energy, it was just right across the board. I have no energy. That's it. I can't really do anything. I'm exhausted. I have no energy. But when my brain was able to work, when my body was able to work, it just gave me options. And it made me realize that, sometimes we kind of lump everything together. In my work, I ran meditation circles as well, and I had the pleasure of looking up many different topics on very, very obscure and different things. But what it also introduced me to, not alone had I mental energy, physical energy, I also had creative energy and spiritual energy. So why can't I access the different energies? What would it be like if I actually use them? And what if that was there for me? That I would have maybe not 100%, maybe it's only 50%, maybe it's only 40%. But what if I could use that when everything else wasn't available to me? And I think that is such an important thing to know and to get to know yourself. And I think through my journey with neurolinguistic programming, I really got to know myself. And I started, again, it's the study of behaviors, of what we do, how we do things, but also how our beliefs hold us back and stop us from doing different things. And it's using language to challenge the beliefs you have, to challenge. A lot of the belief systems we have, believe it or not, aren't our own beliefs. A lot of them are from conditioning. A lot of them are inherited. When you think how you were brought up and what was right, what was wrong, what way to do things. But sometimes in adulthood, those beliefs can get in our way. They can stop us in our tracks. We are Irish. We're not very well good at believing in ourselves, but sometimes we do limit our beliefs. So one of the things NLP helped me to do was challenge the belief that, yeah, I've ME, I can't do that. And it made me kind of go, well, yeah, I have ME, but what's stopping me from doing that? Okay, the energy. Right. So it takes X amount of energy to do this. Yeah. So how could I do it in a different way? Or how could I do part of it? And this is a thing and we study in NLP too. We're all very good at all or nothing thinking. And we think if we can't do it all, we can't do any of it. But we can do a little bit at a time. And sometimes that little bit makes all the difference. But that little bit builds every single time, every single day, every single time you do something, it builds into a bigger whole. So by starting to break down how I did everything and looking at how I did things, I could break it down into component parts. And then I could reassemble it together so I could do it bit by bit. But of course, we can be very impatient with that because we want to do it all now. But again, by looking at where you're at, what you can do, what little bit can you do? There is a life. In my 20s, I was very, very ill. In my 30s, I started to get a little bit more energy. In my 40s, wasn't so bad at all. I had quite a quality of life. I was able to pace myself. I was able to build up what I could do in that. So I could get to a certain level. And I have been hit with a flare since I've retired. But I see that flare now as a huge learning curve to me. What's the learning in it? What is it trying to teach me? The reality is I have been running on empty for a very long time. That's why I decided to retire. I'd worked up enough PRSI contributions for pension, which was why I went back into the workforce and kept going. But I decided to retire at that stage, and I was very, very lucky to be in that position. But I also had been looking after my elderly parents, and my mother had dementia. And so running on empty, and I'm sure that's something you're all very familiar with, that you push yourselves so very hard. So sometimes kind of looking at what you're doing, it's no surprise now that I've had a flare up. Um, No surprise at all. Like, I mean, the body gets you. And when it gets you in one position, in a static position, it says you're staying there now. This is what you need. You need the healing. And for once, I actually am listening to my body. Well, not for once, but I am actually listening to my body at the moment. And I suppose that's the thing. How are you listening to your body? You know, what beliefs do you have that get in your way? Do you believe you have to do something? Do you have to do it a certain way? Or could you come up with something else? NLP helped me look at behaviors as well. What do I do? How do I do it? And when I do it, am I storing up energy for myself? Am I energizing myself or am I depleting myself? And actually having a look at our behaviors. What are the things that get you into, into a mess, really, into an absolute crash? And, one of the first steps in NLP and in coaching is to meet the people, meet your clients where they are. So where are you now? Because I've met myself where I am at the moment. I have about 2 usable hours in the day, and I'm okay with that. And that's just the way it is at the moment. I know it's not going to be forever. I know I will come back. I know it with the proper rest. And I suppose this is something that I really didn't give it before because there was always something else. There was always somebody else. But for the first time in my life, I suppose I'm meeting myself where I am. And how are you? Where are you? Are you meeting yourself or are you fighting against it? Because this is one of the things that I found the hardest was I seem to be fighting against myself all the time. And sometimes there comes a time when you have to stop fighting. You have to give in. It doesn't mean that you've given up. It means that you've actually acknowledged yourself and where you are and your body. And you're honoring yourself and you're honoring your body and you're giving to yourself. How often do you think that you do that? How often do you feel judged? How often do you judge yourself? How judgmental are you? Do you feel you should be doing something? Because this is one of the things. Should always it's called a modal operator of necessity. I have to do something. That comes with a judgment. That comes with a label. So how are you judging yourself? How are you labeling yourself? Are you being kind to yourself? Are you allowing yourself to work through this disease? So are you meeting yourself where you are? Again, at the moment, and this is something that I found really, really helpful for, I suppose, medical practitioners when you go to a doctor. Very hard in a 10-minute slot to get everything across of how you're feeling. Because the list, it's foolscap and it goes on and on and on. So I found that, well, I have been very fortunate in the last year to connect with a brilliant GP who had ME herself when she was a teenager, was diagnosed, rested, and was able to get back to normal. So she is absolutely fantastic. So when I go to her now, actually telling her where I'm at, I can say to her, I have 1 usable hour, I have 3 usable hours, I have whatever. And this is out of a 24-hour period. Because sometimes I think that's very hard to describe what it's like. People, when you hear tired all the time, that doesn't sum it up. A lack of energy, fatigue is just something so much more than just being tired. You go to bed, you don't get your restorative sleep, so you don't wake up the next day. People don't understand that. So while we're meeting ourselves where we are, can we meet other people where they are? And where they are is in a lack of knowledge. They don't know. How do you explain that? Like, oh my God, can you imagine to try to explain what that is like to a normal person? I have a thing called polyautoimmunity, and a lot of people with ME have different autoimmune diseases as well. But one of the things that I was lovingly introduced to in my 40s was celiac disease, which is meh, I hate it. But I had no clue about celiac disease. And when I go to a restaurant now, or if I go out, people don't know. I didn't know that it wasn't just that you can't eat bread, but you can't eat cakes, you can't have any cross contamination, you can't have anything out of a fryer. that's used to with any kind of wheat or grain. You can't have something out of a toaster because one crumb is 10 parts per million and I'm only allowed 20. So two crumbs will kill me, or make me really, really sick. But this is the thing, it got me to realize I didn't know anything about that. So the people who are around you may not realize or may not know either. And sometimes when we try to speak for ourselves, when we try to advocate for ourselves, we can be very reactive, we can be very emotional because it's such an isolating disease. But how you come to, how you explain, how you share that knowledge is probably in the most factual way, a little bit at a time. So I suppose that's how are you sharing your knowledge, and how are you yourself at explaining things? Because NLP is a communication model. That is the basic thing, to build rapport, to get in touch with people, to be able to open up their map for them. So how are you at communicating? And who have you got? Just thinking about those things. Sometimes we lump everything together. It's like the energy. We lump everything together. Well, they'll never understand it. There's no point in telling them. There's no point in trying. But there always is point as well. And I suppose that brings me into another topic. How are you at boundaries? I had a terrible problem with boundaries. As somebody who's born in the early 1960s, probably all had the same kind of thing. I noticed that a few people in family and out of family I was having a huge problem with because I was trying to set a boundary. And when I would say and tell them no, they'd come back at me. And then I'd spend my time trying to explain to them, you don't realize what it's like. It's so, but I just can't do it. And I'm so sick. And they were saying, well, I can't do it all. This kind of stuff that people are coming back to me. And it was true working with the NLP, because in all the different trainings I have done, we have to work on ourselves and we have to work on each other. And I remember when I was doing the master practitioner, and one of the things, and it was really at the time, I was having a tough time with my sister because my parents were ill. I was doing my best, I was doing a lot, but my sister was very concerned about how long the grass was getting. And as you can see, I stayed awake all night worrying about how long the grass was. Grass doesn't matter to me. So what? Let the bees go and do the work. Leave it alone. But she was putting huge pressure on me about this. So it kind of said, how do I set a boundary? So how do you set a boundary? Are you good at saying yes? Are you good at saying no? Because saying no is really, really important. It's really important for your physical health, but it's really important for your mental and emotional health as well. And the thing that I figured out was I wasn't communicating very well because I was trying to explain. And when I was explaining, after 30 years of this disease, can you not understand me? What's wrong with you? Are you not listening? The answer to that is no, she's not listening. She doesn't want to hear it. It scares her. So she's never going to listen. So I looked at my part in the conversation. And my part of the conversation was I was trying to be heard. But then I noticed something. While I was trying to be heard, I wasn't hearing her and I wasn't listening to her. And as soon as I stopped trying to explain, as soon as I stopped trying to prove myself, as soon as I took myself out of the equation and actually started to listen to her, guess what happened? She started to listen to me. And we have a much better relationship now. And I'm really glad. So where I came from was, when it comes to a boundary, what was stopping me in the boundary was the emotion. So now I'll come to her, or I'll come to anybody else, and I'll say, I can do it, or I can't do it. That's it. I don't need to explain. I don't need you to give me permission. I can't do it. And then find a way to work around it. So that was something that was very, very huge. And when I was trying to explain my case, I was exhausted. Just because you're trying to be understood. And this is the thing, we're seeking to be understood. But how we're being understood, there's a very famous Chris Christopherson song, And there's a great line in it. It says, if you spend your time talking to the people who don't listen to the things that you are saying, who do you think's going to hear? And you could die explaining about the things that they complain about or things they could be changing. Who do you think's going to hear? So somebody who isn't listening to you, they're never going to listen to you. So who are you expending your energy on? Are you expending your energy on the people who are listening to you, the people who are supporting you? Now, you can educate the other people, but you have to come from a point of logic, because emotion scares people. But banging your head against a brick wall, particularly when you have very, very limited energy, is not a great way to go about it. But again, this is all trial and error. This is actually finding things out. And I found with NLP, by looking at my communication, by looking at my behaviors, by looking at myself, I realized that a lot of the conversations that had been really difficult for me over the years, it was because I was going into them looking for something. I was seeking to be heard, but I wasn't seeking to hear or to listen. And I think that can really, really help as well. Another thing I've come across, which makes a big difference, is pacing. You know, I watch look at a lot of the research and different bits and pieces, and something that's coming out in Australia at the moment is CFS Health. And I saw a really good article on it, where when we are at the stage we're at, whatever level of energy we have, we tend always to push ourselves. And I know we need to push ourselves a bit, but I don't wonder, I suppose you all have this in common. When you have a good day, do you pace yourself and decide that you're just going to take it easy and see what you can get done and how you can rest in between? Or do you just do everything you weren't able to do for the last month or two and use every little bit of energy? So you go way up the scale and then you crash way down below your baseline. And it takes you 2 months to even just try to struggle back to the baseline. This study I was looking at was talking about the baseline and about pacing. Where your baseline is, this is where meeting yourself, where you are at the moment. Can you maintain the baseline? Can you work within, whether it's 1 hour, half an hour, 4 hours? Can you work within that for a month, not push yourself over that? What would it be like if you could achieve that baseline? So you had some kind of stamina built up on that. And then after maybe a month or 6 weeks, you tried a little bit extra. And if that worked out, you stayed at that baseline for another month. And then you tried another little bit extra. You're building stamina. You're building strength. You're not crashing. You're not having to climb the mountain back up. You're staying level. Pacing is crucial. It's made an awful difference to me in this flare. The flare came in, I've had 4 antibiotics and 2 sets of steroids. So the body is quite tired anyhow. And anybody, or as I would say, normal people, which is people who don't have this invisible disease, normal people, that would floor them. But the reality is, when you have ME, you are sick all the time. All the time. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So when you do get a sore throat, or you do get a cold, or you do get a sinus infection, or you do get a kidney infection, of course you take to the bed and you rest, don't you? No, I'm sick all the time, so I can't just stop. But you really should stop. So how often do you stop? How often do you give yourself that chance to recover? Because the reality is, you're in charge of your own recovery. There's nobody else. There's no plan of management out there. There's nobody telling you this is how you get over it. Getting over it is how you learn to monitor yourself, how you learn what pushes you over the edge, how you learn what keeps you at an even keel, at a pace. To acknowledge, this is what I have, this is where I am. I have an hour, I have 2 hours. Now that could be 10 minutes, 6 times a day. But that's what your level is. And if that's what your level is, can you allow yourself to keep within that level? Who are you competing with? A lot of the time you're competing against yourself. You're pushing yourself too far. What would it be like if you just took a little bit of a step back? If you got a different perspective? If you got to know the behaviors, the beliefs, the things that trigger you into doing too much? That's where I came from, I suppose, before this flare up. I had built quite a plan of management for myself. I knew what I could and what I couldn't do and where I was at. So I had gotten to the stage that I could do something for an hour and a half and then rest for an hour. And then I could regroup after an hour and a half and do something else. So I was able to get things or achieve things in the day. But that took studying, that took looking at what am I doing? How much energy do I have? How often do you review that? How often do you look at yourself and what you're doing or how you're doing it? So I suppose that's one of the big, NLP things, working within your boundaries. Because the reality is when you work within your boundaries, you will feel better and you will maintain better and you will build stamina and you will build resilience. If you walk outside of your boundaries, there are consequences. And those consequences are crucifying. They're horrendous. They're really, really bad. So again, when you're working within your boundaries, when you're working within your and pacing yourself, you're actually doing something. You're being proactive. It's not reactive. How often are you reactive? How often do you stop and think about what you're going to do? Now, this is the thing with the different energies coming in again. I have always looked at, well, I'm a very lazy person to begin with, to be honest with you. And if I can do things easy, I will do it because life is all about the fun and the joy for me. That's what it is. I'm not going to let this disease take it now away from me. I'm going to be myself and I'm going to live well with it. I have it, but you know what? Everybody has limitations, whether they're financial, whether they're work, whatever it is, everybody's limited. This is my limitation, but I sure as hell am going to live well with that limitation. So I will sit and I will use my mental energy and work out how could I do that a lot easier with a lot less bother, you know? And that's kind of helped me even in running of the house or looking after the household. Because if everybody is regimented, puts everything back in the same place every day, if the kids go and hang your own clothes up, I ain't doing it. Look at how your life is functioning. Look at the sticky parts. What gets in the way all the time? You know, what could you do differently about those sticky parts? How could you address them? Use your creative energy here. What could you do? What could you do instead? Because sometimes we tend to get stuck in the loop of doing the same thing over and over again. Again, it's conditioning. And the reality is, if you always do what you always did, you're always going to get what you always got. So by just having that little bit of creativity and that little sense of fun, because you know what? Sometimes it isn't fun dealing with these horrendous symptoms. But you know what? The disease isn't fun, but you're fun. Look for your humor. Look for your light. Look for the life that is in you because you, despite this and what it has taken for you, are an incredibly vibrant, intelligent person. You have so much to give to the world. I used to think because I had ME, because I had to rest so much, I wasn't out kicking the football with my boys. I wasn't able to take them climbing over mountains or hiking through whatever, you know? But what I did have is when my boys came home from school, I sat with them and I talked to them and I listened to them. And to this day, my boys talk to me and I talk to them. And I give them, actually, one of their girlfriends actually came to me and said, thank you so much for helping him and telling him how to express his feelings. I've never met a man who can express his feelings before. So never underestimate the difference you are making in somebody's life, in so many people's lives, because a lot of the time we can get to the stage where we feel less than we are. Sometimes we feel hopeless. But really, the lives you touch with your kindness, with your love, with your smile, that means something. It means so much because there's two ways of spreading light. You can be the candle, but you can also be the mirror that reflects that light. without actively burning. So you already do so much. So give yourself a little bit of credit. Pat yourself in the back, appreciate who you are and what you do. Because you are so vital and so important that if you weren't there, so many people would be at such a grave loss. And I think that's an important thing to know about yourself. And from that, I suppose I'll go on to talking about feelings. That lovely touchy feeling thing. Our feelings, particularly in ME, are so important because we've been taught, I suppose, to push everything down, to suppress it. When you do that, you build a wall inside yourself. It's very hard to get over that. So allow yourself to express your feelings. If you feel sad, name it. I feel sad. If you feel angry, name it. Let it go. Release it. Your feelings are there for a reason. They're there to tell you something. Your body is always trying to communicate with you. But you see, with ME, it communicates an awful lot and we kind of disconnect. So what would it be like to start to reconnect to ourselves, to take and listen to the messages, to not overgo our boundaries, to allow ourselves to feel the way we feel? You see, the thing about feelings are emotions are in motion. We don't stay in the same feeling all the time. But when we are down, when we are sad, when we are angry, when we are depressed, we think it's going to last forever. But it doesn't. Now, when you're happy and you have moments of joy, do you think it's going to last forever? You probably don't expect it to last forever. So how come you expect the bad feelings to last forever? And so when we get a bad feeling, it's like a sore tooth. What do? We decide we're going to poke it, which is a great idea because, like, at the end of the day, you're not in a bad enough state. You might as well poke it and get a little bit more out of it, get a bit of value out of it. But the thing about your mind is it is a problem seeking and solving machine. So your brain is going to go after another problem and another problem. Your brain will give you more of what you ask it for. So if you're looking for a problem, oh, it'll give you a string of them. So you just go down that rabbit hole. So if you turn it around, if you address your feeling and say, oh, I feel rotten, I feel lousy, you allow that out. Then how do I want to feel instead? How do you chase the good feelings? How do you get them? It's by looking at what you have as against what you don't have. And it's amazing how much we take for granted in this life, how much good, how much joy that there is out there. But we need to go looking for it. Because if we're stuck looking for problems, that'll keep us going until the day they put us in the box. But we can still go looking for the good stuff. Gratitude is huge. Gratitude makes a big difference to actually appreciate. And again, appreciate yourself, appreciate where you are. Don't be too hard on yourself. You know, when I think about it, I spent an awful lot of time and a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions trying to get other people to understand me. But now I seek to understand myself. I spent so much time trying to get people to accept me. Now I accept me how I am, and I feel a lot better because of it. I think that makes a difference. You know, something else around that too is you know, if you don't know how to offload your feelings, because sometimes it's difficult to know. I find now a great way, particularly when I'm really, really angry, is I free write. So I'll page after page, I will let it out on a page and I will give out, oh my God, royally. And the amount of 4-letter words in it. Oh God! Like, no, I tear them back up because if anybody ever what you call it read them, I'd be committed. But that's it. I write it. I get it out. I tear it up. I put it in a dish. I burn it. It's gone. I've released that feeling, and it's a great way of releasing frustrations. But it's also a great way of getting in touch with yourself, because I start off in a rant, but by the end of it, I've talked myself out of that rant and I feel so much better. So that's one of the things that can really, really help you to release those feelings and allow yourself. Another thing is meditation. it's it's something that just calms everything down. I find even if it's something for 10 minutes,
that mindfulness, that you're present, you're not worrying about things, you're just in the moment. I find a body scan very, very handy, and you can find them on YouTube, anything from 10 minutes to half an hour or whatever. I've because I took over the meditation circle, I kind of started meditating myself, and I find that has left me that I'm a lot less reactive. So I don't get as upset, I don't get as annoyed, and that really helps me with my energy too, because again, emotional energy is there too. But it might be something worth thinking about. The first few times, it's a practice, by the way. It doesn't just happen naturally. And of course, when you start it, you'll be scratching, you'll be everything, you'll be trying to squirm and turn, and that's okay. But now I have gotten to the stage that I can meditate for an hour, even with pain, but I push the thoughts away. And that gives me great peace. And it's a great way to do it with, you know, I usually do it early in the morning when I take my pain meds. And the pain meds I take now are paracetamol. I'll take 2 paracetamol and I'll bring my body into a state of complete relaxation. And then I'm better able to face the day. So I suppose that's one of the things to talk about. I'm rambling off a lot of different bits and pieces here, but I suppose one of the things kind of is dealing with other people. Other people's behavior is a reflection of themselves. It's not a reflection of you. A lot of the time we feel judged, we feel easily triggered, but people don't understand us. But just remember that perception is projection. You project what you perceive onto somebody. You might be mind reading them. They mightn't be thinking that at all. So be careful of the information you pick up. You could walk past somebody in the street. If anybody walks past me in the street, they probably think I'm the most stuck up cow they've ever come across because I'm away in my own head. I don't even see them. I'm thinking of something, I'm formulating something. So if somebody walks by you and you say, oh, she ignored me. She mustn't like me. What did I do? See, going down the hole, looking for the problem. Whereas realizing that most people live in their own heads. They're not even seeing you. They're up there. What am I having for dinner? What time do I have to drop the kids at bed? Where am I going there? When am I going that? What do I have to iron? What am I going to wear to work tomorrow? My God, the conversations we hold in our heads. Our heads are like TARDISes. They're much, much bigger on the inside. So get out of your own head and maybe stop mind reading people.